Okay, welcome to today's study clinic. Today is the study clinic that we will be focusing on living with tectonic hazards. Right? For study clinics, as previously mentioned, we will be focusing on stretching. So we will only be looking at the open-ended question types that occur within this topic itself. For the rest of the questions, right, when I upload this onto Teams, you can go and take a look, right? Take a look at the other question types, the describe, the explain, the account question types. They're all pretty useful and they come with the guides. If you do encounter any problems and you would like to seek some clarification, feel free to contact your subject teachers or myself to book for a consultation. It can be physical, no, it can be via Teams call, or if you think that it's a small enough area, a small clarification, you can actually just send us a chat on Teams itself. So we are all here to giving you the support that you need for your prelims and O levels itself. So where exactly will you find living with economic hazards in terms of your question paper? Now this will be you will encounter this as a section C question, which is 25%. One of the two topic areas which they can set together with food resources. Now bear in mind that there are years where it will be food heavy and there will be years where it's tectonic heavy, which means that you may encounter 1.5 questions on one topic. Okay, so the good news is whether it's 1.5 or it's just the other half of the question, normally you will still have the open-ended question relating to the topic itself. So you will be normally in most circumstances be presented with one open-ended question for food resources and one for living with tectonic hazards. Okay, that's the general trend that we have identified for this particular syllabus. Now, which one will come out? I can't tell you. I don't know. Okay, if I knew, I would tell you, but unfortunately, we have not noticed a clear trend. So, uh, can you opt not to do this? No. Short answer, no. Okay, what are the key areas that we are going to look at? So if you look at KQ1, the component where we look at hazards, tectonic hazards, the component where we look at the internal structure of the Earth and also the movement of plates driven by your convectional currents, these are either describe, explain, or outline questions, means no OEQ. Okay, no open-ended question will come out from this section here because you don't have factors to toggle, right? Next, the other part of KQ1, the key thing here, well, I think you need to know this, right? This listed 9 plates, right? The North American plate all the way until the Australian plate. These are 9 plates that you must know where they are, okay? And you must know how to spell them because they, in combination with one another, perform the different boundary types examples that are given to you. So you must know these 9 plates. Okay, this is required information. So they can test you on the plates, require you to name the plates. As long as within this 9, they have they're not obliged to give you the plate information. Okay, now can they test other plates? Of course. If they want to test you other plates, they will have to give you the stimulus, the plate name in the stimulus itself, or they have to give you, yeah, normally it's in the stimulus itself. Okay, so if it's any of these 9 plates, they are not obliged to give you the names. Similarly, you have been given examples here for the different boundary types. The examples correspond to the diagrams that you were taught how to draw last year. So this is where you will find your examples for all the convergent and divergent and transform landforms. So for KQ2, this is where you start looking at open-ended question types. This is where you see the discuss question types appear. So the first area that they can ask you to do a discussion, okay, is how plate movements they influence the distribution of landforms and associated phenomena. So although this is very, very, very rare, it is possible that they can ask you a question in this area. So the second area here is benefits and risks of living in volcanic areas. This is something that you should have encountered at least once, either in a gateway assignment, in a topical question, or in discussion in class with your teachers. Okay, impact of earthquakes on people living in areas prone to natural hazard. This is another one. Is it positive? Is it negative? Do the risks outweigh the benefits? Do the benefits outweigh the risks? So this is the common area that they like to test. The KQ3 itself, once again, you do have large parts of it containing areas where you can test for open-ended question types. So responses, okay, how do people respond? Which is the better response? Okay, effectiveness of strategies in mitigating and responding. These are both areas. So you can they can ask you to toggle between preparedness measures, which is the better one. They can ask you to toggle between preparedness measures and responses. They can ask you to toggle between short and long-term responses. So this whole section that you see here, everything from land use regulation all the way down to provision of healthcare for long-term healthcare, right? These are all important and these all can come out for open-ended questions. So what is essential when you're dealing with open-ended questions? Examples. So you need to remember, if you're going to look at open-ended questions, you must look at examples. Okay, your examples must be clear. They must give you the ability to show scope, intensity, scale of the impact must be visible from the example. So if you're going to tell me the earthquake land use regulation is a very strong preparedness measure, you need to tell me a place where it is very dramatic, where they implement this and then what's the end result? You don't have people living there at all. Okay, the whole area is now used for something else. Like, for example, you talk about the liquefaction regulation, land use regulation in California. Because of that being put in place, you are not allowed to build any housing, any sort of residential, permanent residential in the area at all. So all you have in the area is largely recreational space. So how does that factor in as a preparedness measure? When you're not there, there's nobody to die there. Okay, the impact of the area in times of a natural disaster is minimized to the bare minimum. Okay, doesn't mean that there's nothing left to lose. No, you may still suffer some sort of cost in terms of land use area that's damaged and so on and so forth. But you have, through your actions of limiting land use, negated the likelihood of casualties, okay, or reduced it to a point where it's almost negligible. And that's very important. Okay. So once again, what you tend to see when you're looking at this area of study in living with tectonic hazards, right? Stimulus questions like this, they give you fault lines, then they ask you what's happening, right? Give an explanation. Largely explained questions are pretty straightforward. Okay, like this one you see here talking about how movements can result in the formation of foam mountains. Okay. Once again, patterns, description of patterns shown. So you need to be a bit more observant with this. I would like to highlight something here though. If you're looking at patterns and you're given a map like this with a few map indicators like a north arrow and a scale, normally it indicates that they want you to use the information that's given to you, not just the areas where you have severe shaking, but if you're not going to talk about in with reference to the epicenter, which is the star here in the middle, right? You need to talk about directional indicators. Like to the north of it, you tend to see more severe shaking. You tend to see any sort of shaking at all, right? To the south, you tend to see less. Okay, strangely, right? So if you're going to do a description, these are things that you need to look at. You can also use the scale here to tell the examiner that you are observant, that you actually can note that within a 25-kilometer radius of the epicenter, you tend to have a lot of shaking. Okay, except for the area that's in the ocean. Right? So these are essential skills that you must have, even though uh, this is data response question, you have to be even more careful because they've already given you the data and they give you some of these helping tools to help you manage this. It is essential that you actually don't leave them out, because when you leave them out, you're not answering the question in completion. Right? So this is important. You need to know this. Okay, some more things that look a little familiar to you, your Block Mountain Rift Valley formation. So not very common nowadays for this kind of such simple questions, okay, labeling questions. But being Elec Geog on a very good lucky year, you may have a chance to see questions like this. Okay? Yeah, right. So if you do see this, let me know your prayers have been answered. Right? So stimulus, very, very common. You then tend to get stimulus questions for this area here. Okay, different type of stimulus. It can be maps, it can be photographs that we saw earlier. Right? Now, for this, the very first open-ended question type that we're gonna peel together, peel back, and then take a look at how to answer this. Okay, the statement given is tsunami monitoring and warning systems have greatly reduced impacts from tsunamis. To what extent is this statement true? Ignore the word to what extent, just answer is it true or is it false and give evidence to support. So you need to think about this very carefully. What are the functions of tsunami monitoring? Okay, where do you know that we have implemented this? Okay, what are the pros of this? Has it done wonders in terms of loss of life in the location that you're going to talk about? Has it reduced damage to property? Okay, does it do anything for damage to property? If not, then list that down. Okay, that is a limitation to its effectiveness. Cons, right? Are there problems with this? Are there evidences of scenarios where we have learned that it didn't help, even though there were monitoring and there were warning systems, it didn't help, right? So what are the key anchor examples that you can think of that I can think of in terms of this particular question? You only have your 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, which hit Banda Aceh and Indonesia, which wiped Banda Aceh out. And also you have the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and subsequent tsunami, which caused the Fukushima nuclear disaster. So this is the key problem that you have to address, right? So when you are looking at this kind of question, once again, the killer tends to be your example. If you cannot tell me the year, you cannot tell me the tsunami that happened in Indonesia, okay? Let me tell you that tsunamis do occur. Okay, it's not very common, but at least you need to remember Boxing Day tsunami. Okay, so then you give me a frame of what is happening, right? Some numbers about the death toll would be useful, okay, or at least a description about the impact of this particular tsunami, what happened, how many people died, uh, what exactly was the overall effect of this thing. Okay, right. Another format. Okay, this one is about preparedness measures, stating that preparedness measures are the most important that a country can take to reduce death and destruction. So it's not only casualty, yeah, they're also looking at loss of economic value, destruction caused by earthquakes. So how to what extent is statement true? Once again, just say it's true or it's false. Answer with relevant examples. So what can you do? You're looking at preparedness measures against responses. Okay, given factor is a preparedness measure. Which one is up to you? Right? Can I use two preparedness measures and one response? Sure. The contrast factor can be a short, can be a long-term response, can be one short and one long. But you must remember that they are there's a requirement, a hidden requirement within the statement that you toggle a preparedness measure with a response. Okay. So what is the focus on? How do you compare these two very different things? Focus on death and destruction, because that's also what's given in the question itself. So you do need to be very careful when you're dealing with these. There are times where there are always times where um these things are given to you. Then I will need you to be alert and to put in the necessary information in so that you don't get too lost in the process. Okay. Next, preparedness measures again are the most effective in coping with threats of earthquakes, right? So once again, this is another way of asking the same question, right? What are we looking at? We're looking at preparedness measures versus responses. Two preparedness measures will work against one response, or you can have one preparedness measures and one short-term or long-term response. It is totally up to you, but you must have both sides covered. Okay, otherwise it is incomplete uh, assessment of the response. Okay. Now, moving on, this is a very peculiar one. This one actually requires you to describe tsunami formation from step 1 all the way to step 5. You can actually find the description in your textbook. Okay, you can find this description in your textbook. It is important that you take a look at this because it is a useful diagram in the learning of the formation of tsunami. Okay, right, once again, stimulus led. So as you can see, right, a lot of the questions in this area tend to be the stimulus-led ones, because they do need to meet up the 25 mark allocation, 8 marks reserved for your open-ended question. You still do have 17 marks worth of other types of questions that you need to finish. Okay. So with that, we've come to the end of this analysis here. Now, I will need you to take some time to go and read up on your the rest of the question types, right? And feel free to drop in a question if you need to. I will be online at this channel. So you come back to the main channel, and if you have any questions you want to clarify, you can key in into the chat box. Okay? Right. Thank you very much. Have a good day ahead.